Hey, what's going on? This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. It's the final month of the year. That means the deals have a lot of finality to them. The biggest, most egregious incentive you can get on just about every 2024 on the ground. Oak Ridge Ford is where you're going to get your next vehicle at Norman Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram. oakridgeford.com is how you check it all out. Mike in Buffalo, Norm in London. It is December 8th, a Sunday spectacular on the go for you. Not so spectacular versus Pittsburgh last night, Mike. The second of two straight losses for the Maple Leafs, dropping to the Caps and to the Penguins. So weak as far as you're concerned. 7-3 in the past 10 for the Maple Brothers. Still having given up the fewest goals against in the conference, but not scoring a ton. And isn't this weird? We wait for Austin Matthews to return. He gets back, and the Leafs start struggling. Not saying it's him. Really, not saying it's him. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Norm. Well, it's not him. It's everybody else, because what happens is, and it's normal psychology, when your best player, your alpha dog, your number one is out, everybody steps up with a bigger effort, and because that guy is not there. And then when he gets back, it's like, he's back. This is great.
Right.
Now we can relax. And it's no, you can't relax, but that's the natural way of things. And it's, he scored against Chicago. He scored against Nashville. He didn't score against Washington and Pittsburgh. They win the first two, even though they didn't play very well against two of the lesser lights of the league. And then they lose to Washington, who's one of the better teams in the league, in spite of the fact that Ovechkin's not in the lineup. And, you could say that was a 1-1 game and the referee got in the way of a clearing pass. And, it was a sort of a fluky victory. And, you could have a definite quibble with the officiating last night. I think in a previous life, Max Pacioretty said something about the referee's mother because they called him for a penalty every time he touched the puck. But, these are games that they have to win. But with the success that this team has had this year, a 2-game losing streak in back-to-back games is not the end of the world.
Not the biggest thing. This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. Thanks to the OGs and converts who are here. I know more are coming on board. A bit of a sleepy Sunday, but that's okay. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. The thing about it, Mike, it's not like the Leafs were blown out in either game. It's not like they had lost the game in the first 20 minutes. It's just they weren't able to, stay tight, stay compact, and get what they needed to get done in the third period. As you said, it's just par for the course when you're taking part in an 82-game season. You're going to have your highs and your lows. Look, they lost both games, giving up 4 points, not against a divisional rival, so not the biggest deal in the world. What can you take away from these games that says, hey, you know what, a tweak here, a tweak there, a good bit of puck luck, and this team will be okay?
Yeah, I mean, of course, and, I'm before somebody in the chat brings it up, yes, a former Leaf, a Leaf that I like, named Michael Bunting, scored the game-winning goal. I was all for keeping Michael Bunting. Now, not for the price that he ended up getting in Carolina, so I get it. But, he scored a power play goal. Again, it seemed like the Penguins had about 45 power plays. They just they didn't play well.
Right.
It was 2-2 in the third period, so the game could have gone either way. And a penalty, a high sticking penalty on Austin Matthews that was not purposeful, but they're going to call it. That it went in the wrong direction. And then he had 2 empty net goals, and then nearly tied the game late in the third. And Matthew Nyes hit the post. They hit a couple posts last night. Let me just address because we'll intersperse a couple questions here. Jason Sparks in the chat, growing tired of the Alex Nylander experiment. Alex Nylander played well last night. It's like, okay, he's not William. That's the problem. He is not William Nylander. You're not going to get another William Nylander. Is he an effective forward? Yeah, honestly, I'd rather have him in the lineup than Ryan Reaves. Ryan Reaves is useless.
But how are these losses on the support guys? So Jason knows his hockey, but really, I mean,
Yeah,
you're
no.
not winning and losing because Alex Nylander is playing his 7-8 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, is he a great player? No, he's a depth forward. And like, okay, he doesn't provide a level of physicality or joie de vivre that you would expect from a fourth liner. So if you think that he can't plug in a third line role, then okay, I get it. He's been a marginal NHL player throughout most of his career. He scored a bunch of goals late in the season for Columbus last year. This year he comes in an AHL contract, and he's played, I think, effective. Not, eye-opening like, say, Fraser Minton, who we'll talk about in a little bit, but he's not the reason that they lost last night. The reason that they lost last night is because Pittsburgh got opportunity after opportunity after opportunity on the power play, and in spite of Joseph Wall and previous game against Washington, in spite of Anthony Stolarz playing great in both games, lost 2 games.
Yeah, that's the way she goes sometimes. Several weeks ago, I mean, basically a month back, the Leafs were having a bit of penalty trouble, and the results were not always in favor of the blue and white, and that's what happens, right? When you're having to fend off the extra attacker for a lot of the evening, especially in the third. These are the kinds of things that can transpire, and so be it. LJ Reaves has a role, and here we go, relitigating our position on Ryan Reaves, which, I believe will be an ongoing thing. Reaves has a role. Alex Nylander has no use on this team besides backup. I mean, if you're pinning your hopes and dreams on anything substantial on guys like Reaves or Nylander, especially at this point, I mean, you're not directing your angst or your effort in terms of how you see this team in the right place. So again, I agree that Ryan Reaves does have a role, quote unquote, a role. Does he fulfill that role on the nights that he is in the lineup, given a chance to, enact the things that he needs to do to be successful in that role? That's the question. And yeah, I mean, again, the love-hate for Ryan Reaves, Mike, is certainly not going to end. He wasn't even in the lineup, and we're talking about him.
The problem is that you can find other players to play the Alex Nylander role. It's a middle six skill forward role. They have players who can do that. Max Domi, when he comes back, if they move him to the wing, he can fulfill that role. Max Pacioretty, Bobby McMahon, they've got players, so they don't need Alex.
Excuse me.
They don't have anyone to fill the Ryan Reaves role, and that's why Ryan Reaves not doing that role makes him useless. You either shit or get off the pot. You do what you were brought in to do, which was be the bull in a china shop, or get off the ice and get off the team. And just him being on the bench and talking and jabber-jawing with the opposition doesn't get it done. And I'm not saying he has to drop his gloves every game, but he's got to be a physical presence. And he threw a couple hits last night, but on most of the nights out there, he's a passenger, and that's what I can't stand.
Edward Lee, Leafs aren't gritty enough to play the Berube style for sustained periods. Berube had a bunch of tough WHL guys with the Blues. When things are rolling, it seems like they're buying in. They lose a couple of games, and we're questioning everything. I mean, that's what we do as hockey fans.
Now, I like the addition of Steven Lorenz on a minimum salary. He's been big. He's been, he's played a penalty killing role. He doesn't shy away from the tough going, from the dirty areas, those things. He's an effective fourth liner and special teams guy. Connor Dewar is not a big guy, but he's speedy and feisty and gets in the muck, and he's useful in a fourth line role. Now, whether they move him to the wing once David Kampf comes back, who knows? All I'm saying is, they need, and to the point that Edward was making when he was with the Blues, you had the Sammy Blaze, you had the Ivan Barbashevs, you had Patrick Maroon, you had 4 or 5. There was a level. There were various levels. You had Robert Bertuzzo on the blue line. You had various levels of tough SOBs. And this team, they have a few of them. I think they need a few more. And Jason offers the suggestion of Matthew Olivier. I don't think the Blue Jackets are trading Olivier or almost anybody on their roster right now because they're right up against the cap floor. And, they're actually having a decent year. But that type of player, if there is a rental out there who is, a tough SOB, that's what they need. And they're going to need more of those guys.
And this is where the struggle lies. Do the players who Craig Berube is using continue to buy into the way he wants them to play? And we've seen it come, we've seen it go. I mean, it's been pretty good, the relationship between coach and play, the group so far. Or does Berube modify, his tactics due to the fact that he doesn't have the sandpaper he did when they went all the way in St. Louis? I mean, that's what you have to do when you're the head coach, right? You deal with the team that you have in front of you, and that's what how you earn your paycheck, getting the guys to modify their game to bring success. But it's a two-way street, Mike, and as Jason points out, there are players out there who would augment this group in a physical way and what could be a positive way. It just comes down to getting to the point where this team decides that it's either all in on what it has or has to accentuate the group with trade, with some kind of transaction, and whether they're going to be capable of doing that remains to be seen. But it's move on ahead and keep keeping on against teams like Florida and Boston nipping at their heels. And as long as this group, Mike, again, fundamentally keeps the puck out of its net, keeps its goals against down, there's just so much opportunity, and that's just my opinion on it.
Well, I mean, Berube, the reality is when you have lemons, you need to make lemonade. And, he doesn't have that group that he had in St. Louis that was, they out-toughed the Bruins in the 2019 Stanley Cup final. He doesn't have an Alex Pietrangelo who can eat 28 minutes 26, 27, 28 minutes in a playoff scenario. He's got a good defense, a deep defense, and they played well. But he doesn't have what he had on hand in St. Louis. He's got to make do with what he has, and I'm sure he's letting the general manager know, well, this is what I need to have success against the Bostons and the Tampas and the Floridas. Otherwise, they just won't beat them. But, I think right now, they're playing the type of team defensive hockey that makes a goaltending tandem, which a lot of people question, a lot better. They have a core group that can score, that they need to. Now, they've had some bad luck in terms of health, but I think what Treliving is going to do between now and the deadline is he's going to, examine where this team needs to improve, whether it's another center, whether it's another scoring wing, or whether it's bottom six toughness. Some things will be easier to add, other things will be more difficult, but it's an evaluation period. So we'll see. Do
you think the team is good defensively and can ride out with who they have, the Tanevs, the Rileys, the OELs, the Benoits, and then interchange based on who's available and who goes down. And then have these two goaltenders who look really, really effective and confident right now. We've talked about why that is, or we believe that is. Or do you double down on it, Mike? Do you go find someone else who can help to shut down this thing even more? Because at the end of the day, the fewer pucks you allow in your net, the more defensively responsible you are throughout the regular season. It bodes well for the possibilities during the regular season, and you can build upon that. We've seen this team for years be an offensive juggernaut and just be so irresponsible at the worst times defensively, and it's bit them in the fucking ass over and over. Or do you again, how do you look at that? Do you want to strengthen an already strong thing and something that's quite different to how the Leafs are typically composed year in and year out? Or do you feel like, hey, you know what? There are other things that need to be tended to, and it's so far so good. So just leave a good thing alone.
Well, right now they have 8 NHL defensemen when everybody is healthy. You're talking, an offensive pair in Riley and Ekman Larson, the shutdown pairing with McCabe and Tanev. Then your bottom pairing, which you can mix and match: Benoit, Timmins, Hakanpää, Philippe Myers, who's played pretty well, and then they have Matt Benning down in the American Hockey League, who has 400 games of NHL experience.
Right.
So if they start, and remember, the price that you would have to pay at the deadline for defensemen is steep. If they're not willing to trade first or second round picks, which they don't have for these type of players, I think they can make do with what they have. They have the depth. Mm-hmm. Right now, I question. And I think they have the depth in goal, although, if one of these two goaltenders goes down, you have Matt Murray in the minors, but you also have Hildeby and Akimov.
So that's good. 4 guys.
I'm sorry?
That's 4 bodies, right?
Right. But I mean, you have levels of depth is my point.
Right.
Up front, we've seen with all the injuries, they had 8 injuries up front. You're talking about once a center goes down, you're playing Alex Steeves and Connor Dewar and Fraser Minton.
Right.
And, that's where I think the concern is in a playoff scenario that young players or players who are sort of bottom 6 guys make a mistake. Now, I think between now and the deadline, one of the things that will be examined is Fraser Minton and whether he is truly ready for prime time. He has played well. He has scored. He's very aware defensively for such a young player, but he's going to play probably 12, 13 minutes a night as the third line center, with Matthews and Tavares playing as much as they are. He may benefit from going back down to the Marlies and playing 18 to 19 minutes and then coming back later in the year. That's something that Treliving is going to have to evaluate, is whether he thinks a Fraser Minton can play third line center in a playoff scenario. If they think he can, then that frees them up. Maybe they can move a David Kampf out. Maybe, there's some flexibility there, because you have a young player who's got some potential on an entry-level contract. So that is something that will play out as the months go along toward March the 7th.
OG's Converse, like the content, subscribe to the channel. Tobago Cat Matthews is very tradable right now.
Oh, shut up, please.
You can add picks and pieces for years and come and unload a burden of money, and no, he is not kidding. You got to believe that Matthews returning to this lineup, and they did win a bunch when he got back, and then the team losing 2 in a row. You blow it up. It's just it's a coincidence. We were a bit fearful that the red hot Leafs minus Matthews may come back to earth for a little bit, and that's just the way things go in an 82 game season. But trade Austin Matthews. I mean,
it's not even worth discussing.
Right.
That's
I appreciate people leaving comments in the chat. It means a lot, especially if they're not derogatory. And someone has an opinion.
Yeah, Mike, it's a wrong opinion, but go ahead. That's fine.
I hear you. What else do you want to get to here? We don't need to go too much longer. The Leafs have a bunch of games coming up, not till Thursday, and then a couple over the weekend. It's just management of the ebbs and flows, Mike. It's when things kind of start to fall off the rails a little bit, find a way to get them back on track. Keep picking up your points. Keep the puck out of the net. Sure, I'd like to see a lot more goal scoring. I mean, what are they, a +9 right now? This team's usually playing at a +20 clip. But again, the most important thing is being defensive responsibly. And defensively responsible. And at this point, regardless of these hiccups against teams like the Caps and Pittsburgh due to, a bunch of things, all has been pretty damn good. And you can't be too disappointed in where they are right now.
I'll end with this because the 4 Nations Faceoff, which was announced, the rosters were announced on Wednesday. I'm sort of nonplussed about it. I think anybody who's watched me on the Buzzcast or off the post or on the Convo knows that the All-Star game and the Olympics are different, but this is a contrived NHLPA event, and it's like so I'm not. I'll watch it. I have to because I'm a reporter. But am I really getting like all enthused? Will I be pumping my fist if Team USA beats Team Canada? No. I mean, like. Team Canada made some questionable selections, and so did Team USA. But Elliot Friedman made a really good point on his last podcast, and he said a lot of general managers, and I'm sure at least a few, but more than a few, will wait until after the Four Nations Faceoff before they make their moves before the deadline. Now, there's a gap of a couple weeks, but the thing is that, and this is not territory that has not been crossed. John Tavares got injured in the Olympics in Sochi in 2014. Mm-hmm. And the Islanders were in the mix for the playoffs and didn't make the playoffs because of that injury. Teams that are contenders, they're going to wait until after the Four Nations face-off to make sure their troops got through 100% healthy, because if they didn't, then a team like, say, the Dallas Stars, who have a bunch of players, if Jake Ottinger gets hurt in the Four Nations face-off, then they're not going to go balls out and add 2 or 3 guys at the deadline, because their chances of winning a Stanley Cup are dramatically reduced if he gets hurt. And the same thing would apply to the Leafs if, God forbid, Matthews or Nylander or Marner got hurt for the U.S. or Sweden or Canada. The Leafs core group is not going to get a lot of rest. Yanni Hakanpää was selected by Team Finland, but I think the Leafs can recover if Yanni Hakanpää got hurt.
So the Leafs aren't unlike every single team that has representation in this damn event.
Oh yeah,
the concern over any kind of injury. Do you think these discussions are had by the organizers, or do they give a shit?
No, they don't give a shit. I mean,
what's the point of all of this?
Well, money. The point is revenue. This is hockey-related revenue that the NHL and the NHLPA. I am not for if the NHL goes to the Olympics. My proposal would be they go to the Summer Olympics when the NHL is not in the middle of the season. Them taking off 2 weeks in February, I know that goes against, everybody's like, shut up, Mike. We want to see Canada or the U.S. win a gold. Fine. But when your player blows an ACL, don't come crying to me. And that's the thing. Do Leaf fan Canadians what do they want more? Do they want the Leafs to win a Stanley Cup, or do they want Canada to win a gold medal?
That's not a big deal until it happens to them, right?
Right.
Go through some of the comments in the chat. LJ, Leafs need another D, in his opinion. One injury away from a mess.
Okay, LJ, it depends on if you're talking about a top 4 or one of the bottom guys. If you're talking about one of the bottom guys, then I think they could weather the storm. They have, like I said, they have 9 NHL defensemen right now. Mm-hmm. If they lose a Ekman Larsson, Riley, McCabe, Tanev, then I agree. They're in trouble, but they would have to add somebody before the deadline. Definitely.
Yeah. Naz 26 in on that one as well. LJ also thinks our opinions
Thank you, LJ. I love you too.
That's all we do. What the hell's wrong with you, LJ? Michael Matthew, I had him. Where did he go, my buddy? Let's face it, the past 4 games have been unremarkable, and Matthews back in play. Coincidence? We talked a little bit about that. I mean, it is a coincidence.
And no, it's not a coincidence, but it's not Matthews. It's the other 11 forwards and the other 6 defense. It's like everybody breathes a sigh of relief when Matthews is back. Now the big dog is back; he can carry the load.
But how do things change just because 34 is back on the ice?
Like they don't have to try as hard. He's there. He's going to snipe.
What? What do you mean they don't have to try as hard? There's no way these guys are dialing it down because he's on the ice.
I'm not saying it's purposeful. I'm saying it's subconscious, but that's what happens. It just happens.
That's crazy. Huh? That's crazy. Imagine, getting through 2 playoff rounds, looking amazing, going on a run, Austin Matthews joined you for the conference finals, and you fall apart because he's there.
Wait a second, Norm. This is something that everybody in the chat and you will remember.
Yes.
2002, when the almighty Matt Sundin got hurt in the second last regular season game, and Alan McCauley was your number one center, and you had Darcy Tucker and Shane Corson and Alex McGillney carrying this team, and they had so many injuries, and like guys like Don McLean, and I think was that the year Lonnie Bohannes year? But
no, I think Bohannes was before then.
It might have been, but they had a lot of injuries, and then Tucker got hurt in the game in the one game against Ottawa, and they got through 2 rounds, and then they won game 1 against Carolina, and then all of a sudden Sundin comes back, Tucker comes back. There was like 3 or 4 players that came back, and they lost their mojo, and they ended up losing that series in 6 games. Now, do you not bring those players back? Well, I would say until you lose a game, no, you don't. You make sure they're 100% healthy or get as close to 100%. I'm just saying that is something, it's something that happens in professional sports all the time. It happens in football. It happens in hockey, baseball, basketball. It just happens.
Had only Sundin waived his no trade clause there and then, Mike, the Leafs would have ended their run of futility, the Stanley Cup playoffs.
No comment.
A few more. JM, the biggest issue right now isn't their D depth, it's their scoring depth. Bottom 6 guys have not been pulling their weight enough. I mean, who on the bottom 6 are you expecting to score? You have to develop scorers, right? Guys emerge, guys reemerge, and talk about deferring a need on the ice. It's we need to score, we need offense. Well, we know the top 4 guys are going to do it. They've always done it, and they can basically score like a bottom tier team on their own.
Well, I'll say this: I could see a third line. I mean, here's when everybody's healthy. If your third line is Bobby McMahon, Max Domi on the wings, centered by Fraser Minton, that might be able to get you some offense.
Right.
It takes Domi out of the middle, where I think he's not a good fit. Now, whether you want to put Domi higher in the lineup and then move a Nylander or move a Marner down to balance out your scoring, that might be something that Berube does in the playoffs. But the whole point is you have to have 3 lines that score. You have to have 3 lines that play good defensively. Yeah. The one thing I didn't understand about the game last night and about the line construction last night is that they bring Pacioretty back, and the unit that he worked well with when he was rocking before he got hurt was him with Nylander and Tavares. That line was cooking. And instead they put him on the line with Matthews and Marner. And then by the end of the game, they moved Nyes back to the line with Matthews and Marner, and they moved Pacioretty back to Tavares and Nylander. Now, were they concerned about a lack of speed with that line? Well, Pittsburgh isn't exactly, like Eric Hayden. So it's like, I mean, I didn't understand. Did they want to just get Pacioretty back into the swing of things with the 2 top forwards? Maybe.
Well, what did Berube say about it post game?
I didn't hear. I did not hear. But it was a little bit of a question. But was it the reason that they lost the game? No. And Pacioretty can play a top role as a support player with a center like Tavares and a center like Matthews. That allows you to lengthen your lineup and have a Bobby McMahon or even have a Matthew Nyes playing on the third line. They need 3 offensive lines to work, and whether it's Fraser Minton or somebody else that they acquired via trade, that third line center role is going to be a key between now and the playoffs. Yeah,
Patch is out a month. And returns, 14 minutes, 34 seconds, 4 penalty minutes, 1 shot, 21 shifts. I mean, you signed him. He's a veteran. You got to get him back in there. Maybe it's a guy like Pacioretty who should be waiting for an opportunity due to the fact that, he's just there as a support guy. That said, I mean, he's got that pedigree. He's been around, and I mean, he's been off a month. He's got to start somewhere. And even if you want to implicate him in the failure and you're paying him money, get him in there. And I mean, you could let him go on a run. I'd rather see a guy like that play his way out of the lineup than to lose a spot because he was injured. But that's kind of how professional sports goes. Matthew Tanti What does Mike think about adding Lawton or Braden Shen for the bottom six?
Well, I mean, Lawton is a bottom six guy. Braden Shen is not. Braden Shen is a top six guy. And what it would cost to get him, and I'm just looking up his salary right now. I believe he's a $6.5 million. Yeah, $6.5 million. Boy, I pulled that out of my rear end. $6.5 million for 3 more years. I mean, I like Braden Shen as a player. He's physical. He's got a cup. He wouldn't be free. And St. Louis is making a run for the playoffs now. They, have straightened things out under Jim Montgomery. So I don't think he's going to be somebody who is a rental situation. Now, Lawton, I don't know how, Lawton's got another year left at $3 million. He's a physical player. There are some people, and I know a lot of people who cover the Flyers, whether Lawton can be an effective third line center. He's, some people think he's more of a winger. Sometimes some people think he's a fourth line center. And they already are, if you're talking about trading David Camp for Scott Lawton, sign me up. But I don't think Philadelphia is doing that. So it would probably cost you a high draft pick and a prospect. And I'm not sure he's the type of player that they could use, but I don't know whether they would pay the price.
Greg Seaborn, do you think getting Frankie Vetrano is doable?
Yeah, he's a rental. His salary is $3.65 million. He has scored in the playoffs. He's not a center. I mean, he's played center at times, but he's more of a winger. I think that would work. It's just a question of how much it would cost. We'll end on this one. Michael Borland in the chat says, I hope the Leafs sign Nyes ASAP. He's the type of player they can get an offer sheet for. Well, okay. I don't think they're going to get an offer sheet. I'm sure there'll be teams interested in offer sheeting him, but apparently he loves it in Toronto, and he's buddies with Matthews. And it came out this week that they have started up negotiations again. Just to warn you folks, if they sign him to an extension, it's probably going to be a 6 to 7 year deal, which I have no problem with. It's probably going to be in the $6.5 to $7 million range. That's the price of poker. Dylan Guenther got over $7 million. You're talking a 22-year-old player who is a unicorn. He's a physical power forward. He's a bull in a china shop. They don't have anybody else like that who can play that type of top six role. He's not Tom Wilson. He's not going to drop the gloves. He's not going to throw big checks, but he's a powerful, skilled forward. And it's going to cost you, but I think he's worth it. And I hope they do it right now.
Well, that's why they would pay him the money, because they believe he's worth it. The size is there. The potential is there. I mean, he's kind of that player of wax, but he's going to have to fulfill his role and then some to quantify the amount of money that he will be paid. But as you've said, Mike, it's the price of poker. Worldly Rider, trade Mitch Marner. If there's been one guy who's been consistent from the very beginning to right now, top 5 scorer in the league, it's your friend Mitch Marner, Mike. And you've said ad nauseum that whatever dollar figure that is exorbitant that Mitch demands and will end up getting paid, it will not be by the Maple Leafs. So be it. However, if he can continue to play like this, put up 100 points, and finally exercise his own demons in the playoffs and have a great playoff run and that leads the team to wherever it goes, then that's a wrap. That's just the way that's the price of poker, Mike. It's the way she goes.
You're preaching to the choir. I said if they're going to trade Marner, they had to trade him in the offseason. They had to convince him to waive the no move clause. They didn't. They couldn't. He's not going anywhere. He either signs back here.
What the hell would you trade him for? If he said trade me, what would you? This.
Well, you're only going to trade him if you get
Mike. This team, honestly, we talk about the additions, the comings and goings. You pull this guy out of the lineup right now. How the hell does this team do anything?
Well, no. My point is that conversation is past.
Right.
He didn't want to go. They couldn't convince him to go.
Right.
It's over with. He's staying the rest of the year. He's an integral part of their core 4. If they have success or failure, he is going to be in the playoffs. He's going to be one of the key players that determines that. And then in the summer, or maybe even before the summer, they will either have to pay him or say, see you later, Mitch. It's, that's the reality.
Right.
This is a conversation we had in May and June, and they did not get it done. It's over with. He's going to be in blue and white for the rest of this year, and then we'll see.
Okay. So the Devils coming up, the Ducks, the Wings, the Sabres. So what would you like to see from the week ahead, and then we'll get out of here?
As many wins as possible. They're in a race with Florida for first place in the Atlantic. I think it's imperative that they finish in first. If they don't, then they play Boston or Tampa in the first round of the playoffs. And we know that story all too well. Right now, like I'm going to the game in Toronto on next Sunday against the Sabres. The Sabres have lost 6 games in a row. They're one of the worst teams in the league right now. I mean, not talent-wise, but performance-wise. But
what's coming.
As we know, exactly, folks, what's coming. It does not matter. That team could go 0-81 and they beat the Leafs.
It's not a Tuesday, so the Leafs have that going for them. Are you credentialed with the Sabres for that game?
Yes, I will be up in Toronto.
Isn't that ironic, eh?
Oh yeah, yes.
When
I was credentialed full time with the Leafs, and it was a part-time credential because I was sharing with another reporter.
Right.
The games that I would not go to are Buffalo, Toronto, because I see and cover Buffalo all the time. So the last thing I want to do is drive up the QEW and risk my life on the icy environs of Burlington and Hamilton just to go see the team that I could drive 10 minutes to go see them lose to them beat the Leafs at the KeyBank Center. So,
Mike, if you can stay off of our the QEW or 400 series of highways, they're an absolute shit show. It's just, I mean, it is what it is. If you're from the GTA, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
They don't use salt anymore, do they?
Well, it's not just that. There's just so many cars, so many people. It's just nobody has any consideration for anyone else. Edward Lee, if they don't win 3 of the next 4 games, there's a problem. Look, if the Leafs don't win every single game, there's a problem. That's how we kind of view this team. And again, we can go on about what's going to happen in the playoffs. What do you rather have happen between now and then? The team suck back into the playoffs and just go on a run, or just have a team that keeps the puck out of its net, plays offensively capable, sometimes beyond what it really needs to produce offensively to get the job done, take a run at a division title, potentially take a run at a conference title. I don't know, dare I say, take a run at a President's Trophy. What would you rather this team do? I mean, again, we've been bitten so many times in the playoffs. We understand that. But between now and then, I need to be entertained. We're going to talk a lot about it, but I'd rather talk about a team that I'm confident in than one that just brings me misery day in and day out.
Boston has set the record for regular season success, and they lose in the first round. Good habits equal good results. But when it comes to the Leafs, the good habits now have to be the good habits in April.
One of the craziest scenarios, Mike, and speaking of the Bruins, and you brought up the Blues, the Jim Montgomery situation. The guy leads the team to the best regular season record ever. Mm-hmm. They beat the Leafs in the playoffs last spring, and the guy gets juiced to start the season and hired right away by another team. Like, in his wildest dreams, he couldn't have figured that he would be coaching the St. Louis Blues right now. I mean, guys get fired and they chill, but this is a dude who was a victim of that lack of success in a temporary span that cost him his job. That was really, I mean, it was arguable as to whether he should have been fired and then hired by another team. It's just, the concept is just so damn bizarre, Mike. It's like cut down in his prime, and then he's on another team, running another team and getting it revamped within a week. It's crazy.
What it proves to you is that beating the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs does not carry enough cachet in Boston.
They want more, and they've done that so many damn times. Mr. Augello, thanks for being here. Where are you writing? Where can we catch you outside of the Leafs Convo?
The hockey news covering the Sabres, and I actually will be doing a few Leaf pieces for the hockey news as well. So we're
looking forward to that. OG's Converts, thanks for being here. If you're just dipping your toe in the Leafs Convo waters. Thank you so much for that. Like the content, subscribe to the channel, share what we do with your friends. Look out for Convo Shorts. We'll cut this show up tomorrow, and you guys can just have at it. We'll be back most likely in a week, but you never know. If something breaks, Mike and I will reconvene within 7 days and put together some more content for you guys to love and admire and share and also loathe. So that's why we do what we do. For Mr. A, I'm Mr. J. Have a good one, guys. The Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford is out.